So imagine this, you buy a phone today and 2 years later the battery weakens, the screen cracks, and what do most of us do? Toss it out, buy a new one. And that's the world that we live in right now, a straight line from take, make, and waste it. But what if that phone could be endlessly reused, repaired, or even reimagined into something that's new without ever becoming trash? That's the promise of the circular economy. And today we're adding another twist, how emerging technologies can actually turbocharge that vision. To explore this, I'm joined by two fantastic colleagues, Sofia, who knows the ins and outs of circular economy, and Luna, who works at the cutting edge of tech and sustainability. So let's dive in, not into the bin, but into the loop of the future. Sophia, let's start with a myth buster. People often say that circular economy, oh, that's just recycling. But I know you'll tell us it's much more than that. How do you explain it to someone who's new?
Most people imagine recycling bins when they hear circular economy, just like you said, but it's actually more deeper. For example, the thing you mentioned previously, uh, take, make, and waste, it's a linear economy. We extract raw materials, produce, use, and then throw away. But in circular economy, it's about designing out waste from the very beginning, and it asks, for example, some questions like, can we design products that last longer? Can we reuse or repair instead of throwing away? That's something our ancestors did before invention of internet and shops everywhere, and they repaired their broken stuffs, for example. Then, can we turn waste into resource for another process? And I would say that recycling is just one small piece of much bigger system of smarter design, reuse, sharing, and originating natural systems. So I hope I answered your question.
Definitely, and I think that gives us some good, I think, insight to it. But give us a story, maybe from Europe or somewhere global, where you have seen some principles working at scale in a way that feels real and not just theoretical. So, what do you have to say on that?
Yes, I think the best simple of this is, for example, Amsterdam. The city has adopted a doubt economy, a donut economy model where circularity is at the heart of policies. More of the buildings are designed with reusable materials, companies share resources and energy, and also food waste is minimized by connecting supermarkets, restaurants, and farms. Also, I would mention maybe company as an example. For example, IKEA. I know everyone likes to buy in IKEA, and they are redesigning products so customers can repair, resell, or recycle furniture instead of discarding it.
That's great. I mean, I just bought an IKEA furniture, so I can totally relate to that.
Yeah.
But, a circular economy is also a kind of a revolution, and every revolution has some kind of roadblocks. So, what, according to you, are the biggest roadblocks that you see from our old take, make, dump model to a truly circular one?
Yeah. Well, I would say that the biggest problem is mindset because we are all consumers and fast buyers, fast throwers, however you want to say it. And I think the mindset change is the biggest problem because industries and consumers are used to cheap and disposable products. And I would say that even companies, because I'm an economist, need to change their mindset and from just making profit to take a really important step into saving the planet. Also, infrastructure. We need new systems for collecting and repairing materials. Also, for example, there are some barriers in costs and policies. So often it's cheaper to produce something new than to reuse or recycle. So I would say that we need to change these laws and policies so everyone who use it the second time has some maybe better law, maybe just have some, for example, sale or it's cheaper for him or her. Thank you.
Right, makes sense. I think because people are at the center of it, the mindset actually plays an important role, but also the policies, because the government will actually drive these actions. And you rightly said that, initially it might seem costlier to you, but it's actually cheap. There's actually a business case for using sustainability. So now, Luna, now let's talk tech. When we say emerging technologies for sustainability, it's a buffet, right? AI, blockchain, biotech, renewables, you just name it. Which ones get you most excited right now and why?
I think the technology I'm most excited about right now would be large language models, which is sort of subset of AI, which you mentioned. I'm excited about this one because I think it has the potential to provide clarity on points that some people may think is disinformation, which is particularly relevant in international climate policy at the moment. You may have heard what Mr. Trump has said about the UN sort of climate forum and discussion being a hoax. Now, there are reasons why it could be seen that way, but there are also reasons for seeing that actually it's a really important issue, climate policy and climate change. And I think large language models have the ability to help clear up that sort of confusion there.
Right. And I think you mentioned the US president's name, and I think this is a discussion in itself that we can have on a separate day. But could you walk us through one story where technology wasn't just shiny and new, but actually made a measurable difference? Maybe saving resources, cutting emissions, or like Sophia was mentioning, right, shifting behavior.
Yeah, of course. So I have two examples which I like, which are very similar, but are both independent examples from different sides of the world, which I think is really interesting. So recently in Brazil, a small island called there was an AI called Tanya AI released. Now, Tanya AI actually leveraged existing technological infrastructure, that is, phone booths, and it updated them so the local community could give their opinions to the council using these old phone booths with outdated technology using WhatsApp. So that's one example where existing and sort of old infrastructure was updated. So that was sustainably using the old outdated infrastructure. Another example is in London, where they have the red telephone boxes that are sort of quite iconic for that city. Now, these red telephone boxes used old infrastructure, basically from the second industrial revolution, which was landlines and electricity. Now, because people these days carry around a mobile phone, these telephone boxes were now useless. So what they did, instead of getting rid of this infrastructure, was they updated it and put their defibrillators. So if someone's having a heart attack on the street, it's sort of a life-saving point of call. So yeah, those are my two examples.
Right, that's really interesting. And technology is often hyped as a silver bullet, but we know that's rarely true. What's the biggest misconception do you think people have about the role of technology in fixing environmental problems in specific?
Right, so I think, and I'm taking it back to large language models in particular, and their ability to clear up disinformation. Um, it's sort of the other side of the coin is that they can themselves, large language models, chatbots, be a source of misinformation. So I'll take, for example, the other day, I wanted to find out whether pollution whether greenhouse gases were pollution for the purpose of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Seas. Because if greenhouse gases were included in the definition of pollution under that convention, then countries that had, or states that had been damaged by the greenhouse gases of another country could go to the International Tribunal of the Laws of the Sea and sue them for damages, sue that country for damages, which is quite, relevant to the climate policy topic. So this large language model told me that greenhouse gases are included in the definition of pollution because an advisory opinion of the International Tribunal of the Laws of the Sea said it was. Now, I think this is very misleading because it was an advisory opinion that said that greenhouse gases were included in the definition of pollution. So it's only persuasive, an advisory opinion under international law. It's not stating the law. So if we have lots of countries or people using large language models to try and find legal answers very relevant to the climate change sort of discussion, then it could really lead people down the wrong path. So large language models cannot necessarily provide us the answer to things, though they can sort of point us in the right direction of where to go for extra expertise.
Right. That's really interesting about the definition part you mentioned, and I think courts like ICJ giving out advisory opinions and whether that's actually binding and how does that play out in the actual policy and negotiation space. It's a very interesting thing in itself, and I think the people who are trying to get into this space would love to understand the nuances. It's an ocean. I think one can just drown in the oceans of definitions and how actually these advisory opinions affect that. But again, I mean, coming back to the intersection of these two things that we spoke about, here is where I want you both to connect the dots. How can emerging technologies actually accelerate circular economy models? Any cool projects that you've seen, whether to meet or you've read about? And you can go one by one. Maybe we can start with Sophia.
Yeah, well, I think that technology is a huge enabler, and I think Luna mentioned already some nice examples. And I always see the new examples from youth to the oldest people in LinkedIn or in YouTube. They're always inventing some new stuff, so I cannot just say one example, but I can say that using blockchain technology and AI is really a nice example of this, especially, for example, with blockchain, you can trace where materials come from and ensure they are recycled responsibly. And also, for example, AI, you can use to optimize supply chains, to predict waste, to maybe follow the numbers and design smarter production systems. And also there is some example, for example, of 3D printing that allows localized and on-demand production that is reducing waste. And also in fashion, some companies are using AI to predict demand, so clothes are produced only if needed, and reducing overconsumption. So I think it's nice example. In some companies, you can follow these rules and then choose to buy clothes from companies that are doing these things.
Right. Leona?
Yeah, I actually totally agree with Sophie on this one. Blockchain technologies for the circular economy can really help because, as I understand it, the circular economy recycling sort of mechanism really relies on the integrity of data. And then some companies, some businesses, and maybe public bodies as well, when they need to get materials, sometimes there are very onerous regulations as to the standard those materials have to meet. So they are only going to sort of trust using the circular economy if they know that the data held on certain resources coming out of the circular economy is trustworthy. And I think that's what blockchain technology can help with. And then coming in with AI, which can sort of simplify and explain the numbers to someone that doesn't have a specialism in sort of numbers.
Right. That's really interesting. And I mean, technology and climate change, it's again in itself is a step. I'm just trying to figure out what different topics are on this subject and technology having an impact on climate change in terms of emissions, but while on the other hand also helping accelerate climate action. Again, two different sides of the coin. But let's now fast forward to 10 years, right? Although I know that given the geopolitical context, it's really tough to even figure out what's going to happen the next day. But if I were to ask you about the next 10 years, and if you have to bet on one sector, whether it's energy, mobility, manufacturing, or cities, where do you see circular economy plus technology combining to spark the biggest transformation? Again, it can be completely opinionated, but I would love to hear your thoughts. Sophia, maybe you can go first.
Yes, well, I see that transformation will affect the most maybe energy field. For example, when you come in some villages or in some little towns, you will see that they're already circular, even though they don't know what circular economics is. So maybe the one factor that should transform is energy, and especially in cities, because cities are the biggest polluters, and I would say that for example urban areas will integrate renewable energy and smart mobility. Also, they should, for example, integrate zero design and sharing economy. And maybe for a period of one decade or 10 years, I believe we'll see cities becoming living examples of circular systems, reducing pressure on nature while improving quality of life. For example, I will have one example in Slovenia. People are really circular, and cities are really circular because they want to protect their nature, and even they have all newest buildings and everything, they care for it. And I'm really amazed with how their mindset is changed and how they respect what they have of natural resources.
That's really nice. And I think a lot of cities around the world, especially urban cities, can take inspiration from that.
Yes.
We'll have a separate conversation on that someday. I'll try to link what happens in some cities in Southeast and South Asia. And maybe I think there's a lot of inspiration that can be taken. Now, coming to you, Leona.
So I'll say next 5 years, I definitely think the blockchain technology will become more prominent in the sustainability and climate change discussion, especially when we think about carbon markets. For example, I know the World Bank, I think it was around 2023, joined with the Chia network, which is a blockchain sort of technology network, to help increase transparency and trustworthy in the sort of carbon trading markets. Now going on 10 years, which is where your question actually aimed for, because of, at the moment, blockchain technology is more resistant to cyber attacks. However, it's sort of a game of cat and mouse when you think of the increased abilities of quantum computing. So probably 10 years we'll see more energy and more expertise needed for quantum computing to make sure that the blockchain systems that have been created by the World Bank and whoever else are secure and not susceptible to more sophisticated cyber attacks.
That's interesting. And I think Luna is betting big on blockchain, is what I can figure out. But we're coming towards the close of the discussion, and let's leave our listeners with one big thought. If they only remember one insight from today's conversation, what should it be, according to both of you? Sophia can go first, and then Luna can come in.
Well, this is hard to say that what one insight I would share with everyone. I think I already shared that my vision is to use maybe electrical vehicles to don't waste so much, and to use it to recycle and use things more times. And maybe I will conclude with one sentence. It's circular economy is just like nature. In a forest, nothing is wasted. Every leaf, every drop of water becomes food or energy for something else. So that would be my conclusion sentence. Thank you.
Thank you, Luna.
Okay, so I think that the thought I would leave listeners to have is not to fear the sort of accelerated progress in emerging technologies, especially AI, because at least in the UK, there is some fear amongst children and youth in particular that they may not have jobs in the future because AI and robots may take jobs and they will be redundant. But I would just say that whilst AI and these emerging technologies may be very good at recycling knowledge, they are not so great at actually coming up with that individual initiative that's needed to create the world that we want to live in. So I would leave children and youth with hope that they are that individual initiative and spark, and AI and other emerging technologies will simply augment their abilities to create those worlds that they want to live in.
Right. Fair enough. That makes sense. So thank you, Sophia and Luna, for taking us on this journey from breaking myths about recycling to futuristic technology that must just close the loop. And to all our viewers, remember that circular economy isn't about doing less harm, it's about doing better. And the future isn't a straight line, it's a loop, and we're all a part of it. So until next time, this is Climate Policy 101. Stay curious, stay hopeful, and keep looping forward